The older I get, the more I can appreciate the clever craftsmanship of a good wordsmith. In other words, when I was younger, I don't think I appreciated poetry for what it really is. At least not as much as I do now. They say that Rumi is the #1 poet in the United States and most of the civilized world, in fact. And today I'd like to read a little poem that was written by Rumi. Rumi was a famous 13th century poet who's only gotten more popular as years have gone by. The poem he wrote, Elephant in the Dark, has been told and retold for centuries and centuries, and you can even find adaptations of this story through other authors, and in some cases you might suspect that a story that someone written was directly inspired by this particular poem I'm about to read here today. So here it is. Elephant in the Dark. Some Hindus have an elephant to show. No one here has ever seen an elephant. They bring it at night to a dark room. One by one we go in the dark and come out saying how we experienced the animal. One of us happens to touch the trunk. A water pipe kind of creature. Another by the ear. A very strong, always moving back and forth fan animal. Another finds the leg. I find it still, like a column or a temple. Another touches the curved back. A leathery throne. Another, the cleverest, feels the tusk. A rounded sword made of porcelain, and he's proud of his description. Each of us touches one place and understands the whole in that way. The palms and the fingers feeling in the dark are how the senses explore the reality of the elephant. If each of us held a candle there and we went in together, we could see it. And scene. If you've ever heard of Allegory of the Cave or Plato's Cave, it's a story by Plato. Plato talks about this cave where you can only see the shadows projected onto the wall from a fire of what's happening within the cave. And it can be argued that is a metaphor for the faults in human perception and how we only see a piece of reality, not the whole entire picture. And it probably has a lot more messages and lessons contained within it as well, but that's more or less the gist of it. In this case, when it comes to the elephant, the first line kind of throws you a curveball, right? Some Hindus, well, they're starting off mentioning religion right off the bat. So what if it's some Christians or some Buddhists or some atheists? In this particular context, I don't think it necessarily matters. However, it may have very much mattered back when Rumi wrote this poem. Not to mention all of the rhyme and alliteration and other sort of literary devices don't necessarily shine through from the original writing that Rumi did back in the 13th century Persia. Rumi's works were mostly written in Persian, but he also used Turkish, Greek, and Arabic as well when he wrote down his poems. So the fellow wrote in 4 different languages. He knew a thing or two about language. I imagine that he might have written in different languages in order to take advantage of certain literary devices. Maybe the rhyme and the alliteration and the syllable count, or the meaning of different words had multiple meanings, so you can weave the words together, so to speak. So he may have picked certain languages to write poems because they would be more aesthetically pleasing to the ear or have some sort of layer of beauty to them beyond that of the story itself. In this particular case, with Elephant in the Dark, I absolutely love how when you translate Rumi's poems, there's still a message in there, there's still some sort of beauty that you can see within it without all of the rhyme, the alliteration, the syllable counts, the beat, the cadence, the rhythms, whatever you want to call all those different things that make things aesthetically pleasing to the ear. But the beauty within the story itself really comes through in this. He might have been inspired by Plato's Allegory of the Cave to write something like this. Perhaps, if not, maybe it's just a really, really significant perception. If anything else, it's a wonderful way of describing the faults in human perception and admitting that we don't actually ever get to see the whole picture. We only are allowed to see a perspective, which is our perspective. And it's easy for us to take for granted that this, what we are currently experiencing inside of our own bodies, is just our interpretation of reality. It's not necessarily the reality, it's an interpretation. It's just our perception. It's the information that comes into our body, and then we make an assessment and come to a conclusion. And it may or may not be correct. In this case, the person who feels the leg is convinced that this animal is a pillar of an animal. That's all they know. That's all they're allowed to see. Another touches the curved back, a leathery throne. This is for sitting on. So to get back to it, the first line, some Hindus have an elephant to show. I don't think it necessarily matters what religion is at play here, but I do think that the mentioning of religion was significant and something that Rumi was trying to express. But I don't know what it was like to be a Persian 13th century Hindu person, so I have no idea what an elephant stands for and what the symbolism behind an elephant stands for. I don't know if a rounded sword made of porcelain is significant, or a leathery throne is significant to something else, or if they were referencing some leader of the times. Who knows? Maybe it was a political commentary piece of its time, but also was multi-layered, so it can communicate a number of different things. I think that's what makes poetry so beautiful, is the vast array of ways one can interpret a particular piece. And I think some of the best pieces of poetry out there have multiple ways that one can interpret it, and gets you thinking, gets you inspired in one way or the other, makes you feel a sense of beauty, a sense of wonder. There's so many reasons why someone can appreciate poetry, and the reasons seem to keep multiplying the more and more I study it. Anyways, folks, I'm an amateur poetry lover here. You know, give me a break if Rumi is just old news to you, but I think there's a lot that Rumi has to offer, and there's a good reason why Rumi's considered one of the most famous poets, or the most popular poets in the United States and even around the world. It's because Rumi is just absolutely amazing. Even after all the translations, there's still a very, very wonderful thing about the lesson behind the poem. The observation, just the perspective alone, can be eye-opening. And I, for one, feel inspired more often than not whenever I do read a piece by Rumi. And I think that other folks have also felt that way as well. Proof positive, because you see people retelling this exact same story in different ways for years and years to come after his death. Well, folks, thanks very much for stopping by and listening to me read The Elephant in the Dark by Rumi. I hope that you got something out of the poem and any sort of commentary I could share with it, and hope that you check out some of more of Rumi's works. And if you're new to my channel, please know I post every single day here on YouTube, and I post about a lot of different things. So what I did was I organized all my content into different playlists, different categories, and different subjects of interest. So it makes it a lot easier for someone to find something in my channel that might pique their interest. So maybe click on that playlist section after this video and see what else I have to offer. And that's a wrap, everyone. Thanks very much for tuning in. You could have been doing something else with your time, but you chose to watch this video to the end. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. So remember to never give up, do your best, stay true to you, and be amazing, folks. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Good night.